There's something about catching a native fish in its home range. There are a ton of species spread around the world and around this country, but there's something great when you can connect with one fish on your terms. It's a special moment. Today's guest makes his living connecting anglers with native cutthroat trout, and today you're going to experience how he brings it all together so you have a few more tips for your next trout trip. This is the Wet Fly Swing podcast, where I show you the best places to travel to for fly fishing, how to find the best resources and tools to prepare for that big trip, and what you can do to give back to the fish species we all love. Hey, how's it going? I'm Dave, host of the Wet Fly Swing podcast. I've been fly fishing since I was a little kid. I grew up around a little fly shop and have created one of the largest fly fishing podcasts in this country. I've also interviewed more of the greatest fly anglers and guides than just about anyone out there. Josh Gallivan, head guide at Grand Teton Fly Fishing, is going to walk us through his program on the streams and lakes around the Grand Teton area. You're going to hear how he got his start working at the Jack Dennis Fly Shop back in the day. This is a great story. He gets into another Jack Dennis sighting. And you're also going to find out how Josh sight fishes for trout and some big tips on fishing lakes. We're going to get into it stillwater as well today. Plus, you're going to hear about his program around the world and this mothership trip. That it's amazing. You can't miss this one, the mothership trip. It's going to be a good one. All right, let's get into it. Here he is, Josh Gallivan from GrandTetonFlyFishing.com. How you doing, Josh?
I'm good, Dave. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah. I'm real excited about this one. I'm excited because I haven't been out. I mean, I've been in your neck of the woods where you're the head guide with Grand Teton Fly Fishing, but I haven't been out with you specifically. So I'm hoping, maybe the next year we'll be changing that. But we're going to talk the Grand Tetons, Jackson Hole, kind of the Snake River system, everything that's going on out there, which we all know is a lot. We've been covering a lot of content out there. But before we jump into that, first off, how are things going? It's kind of mid. When this goes live, it's going to be like mid to late February. What's happening now? What's going to be happening in the next month or so?
Oh man, it's I'm sitting here in Jackson right now. It's supposed to be negative 18 this weekend. So it's kind of comical that we're talking about a fly fishing podcast.
Has it been negative 18? I've been hearing that around the country. Has it been a while since it's been that cold?
Well, this is the first time this winter.
Yeah, but is that typical? Every winter you guys are getting the cold snap?
Yeah, January is kind of the coldest month of the year, shortest days of the year. But yeah, man, I drive over the Snake River every day, and I'm dreaming about, summer months and spring coming. Yeah, typically in March, kind of second half of March, early April, the temperatures start to stabilize, and we have just some of the best dry fly fishing of the year. And it's still ski season, so there's really not a lot of people that know about it, but yeah, it can be very special.
And is that the kind of blue-winged olives and stuff like that, or is that more midges? What's going on that time of year?
Yeah, Baetis and midges. The snake's definitely a low water fishery, so it's going to fish best kind of the lower the water. And in March and April, before runoff has happened, the fish are just potted up, and they're in the mid-river riffles, and there'll be hundreds of fish in one riffle. You could just have so much fun just standing in one spot.
Wow.
Yeah, it's epic.
That's really cool. So this is good. This is already starting off pretty good because, I'm kind of always thinking about when we get into these things. And you've done a lot of travel, too, around the country, the world, and things like that. But when we take it in there's a lot of times you could fish the snake, right? And we've been out there later in the fall and things like that. But it's great to hear winter.
Yeah, those are the times everybody knows about.
Yeah, that's what everybody knows, but people don't think about this winter. And I guess, could you still in March and April get a cold snap out there, get some crazy weather?
Yeah, you could. I mean, it's definitely more weather dependent that time of year. But then again, I mean, I've fished in snowstorms in June before,
Yeah. Well, we're going to tee that up here in a second. Before we get into that, I want to take it back real quick on your story because I don't want to miss that. I want to hear about how you got into fly fishing. What's your first memory? How did you come into connecting with Grand Teton and Scott out there?
Yeah, so growing up here in Jackson, I fished a little bit as a kid, but I really didn't dive into fly fishing until I was in high school. And I got a job at the Jack Dennis outdoor shop. And, I worked with some pretty amazing people. I worked with Jeff Currier, Scott Sanchez, who's the most creative, innovative fly tyer I've ever seen. I shared days off with Jeff, and pretty quickly I kind of remember the fishing guides coming into the shop, like after guiding, and they were just kind of sunburnt and tired, and they were picking up flies for the following day. And something just kind of in me, I was like, I want that. You know, I need to be a fishing guide. I can't be in the shop just selling flies to people and talking fishing every day. I want to live it, you know?
Yeah.
So after 3 years in the fly shop, I think I was just out of high school, I started guiding. And it's just become you know, my passion, and the people you meet along the way, and you know, it's given me a livelihood, it's given me a life. I really wouldn't have it any other way. I mean, it's really just an awesome thing.
Yes, it sounds pretty awesome. And I love that. I always love when I get a Jack Dennis story or two, and we've had him on the podcast. And
oh, really?
Yeah, it was one of the best episodes because he's just got so many stories. But talk about that. And it was the Jack Dennis outdoor store, not the Jack Dennis fly shop. Is that a different thing?
Well, the fly shop was in the outdoor store.
Okay. So describe for those, because we've talked, you know, we've had Jeff Currier, we had a lot of people on, but I've never heard about what it looked like. Can you describe the Jack Dennis outdoor store back in the day?
Yeah. So the shop itself is a huge outdoor store. It's right on the town square. You know, in the summer, we get 6 million visitors a summer.
Wow.
In our little town of 15,000 people. So it's a really popular place. And Jack did so much for the sport. I mean, it was just awesome getting to work with him. And, you know, it was a really interesting kind of client base, because I think you get a lot of just tourists that come through that are interested in fly fishing. And we do have a good amount of fly fishermen, hardcore fly fishermen that come through too. But, you know, just random people walking into the fly shop, and you just have 5 minutes with them to chat and try to turn them into a fly fisherman right then and there. But, you know, a lot of our bread and butter in the fly shop was honestly like 2-hour casting lessons. And I taught a lot of people. I think I set the record. I actually beat Jeff Currier. I did 5 2-hour lessons in a day.
Wow.
Yeah, so 10 hours of just talking, fishing, and casting in a stocked pond, you know, and I mean, it was good money. It was good exposure. It was just great.
That's crazy. So you had a pond near the fly shop?
No, we had a pond, you know, off-site that we stocked.
Gotcha. So people would come through and they would be new to fly fishing, or maybe they fly fish, but they need some help. And you'd say, hey, let's set up a casting and we'll head out to the pond. Yeah,
exactly. You know, a lot of kids, little, you know, families.
God, that's so good. What's that like when because I've done some casting instruction, and I think, you know, you have your own way. I was never trained, you know, I don't have a certification, anything like that. So I think it was not always the easiest thing. How would those 2 hours look in the casting instruction?
Yeah, so, you know, right off the bat, you're just trying to get to know people, and you're just trying to let your passion sort of shine through with what you're talking about. I would do, you know, with 2 hours, I would do a little bit of knots casting, just try to give them a rundown of what fly fishing is, you know?
Right.
It's actually quite hard to do. There's really an art to it.
Right. So you'd have somebody come out there, you get on the pond, and you would just basically take the rod and say, okay, here's what you got to do. You got to rig up your leader, tie on do you tie some yarn on the end of the leader, that sort of thing?
Yeah, or just cut the hook off.
Cut the hook off, and then basically just kind of show them what a cast looks like. And then do you just give them the rod and say, you know, now try it? Or how do you, like, if it's somebody really new, how do you do that?
You know, honestly, the first thing I would say is, so what is your fly fishing experience, and what do you think fly fishing is? And I think 90% of people honestly thought that you were doing this back and forth motion to create a flying insect above the water, and then the fish would come up and jump and grab it.
A river runs through it, right?
A river runs through it.
That famous cast.
Yeah. So, and I quickly, you know, started telling people, well, the reason that we false cast is, number one, dry the fly off. Number two, you know, reposition your cast and aim. And so people started to pick it up pretty quickly.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. So that's Jack Dennis. Obviously, he's the man. He's got tons of history there. We'll put a link out to that episode we have with Jack as well. But let's get into a little bit back to what I was saying on that wintertime piece. What was, you know, if you take it right to the water, let's just say it's, would you say mid-March to kind of April or kind of in that period. What does a good day on the water look like as far as weather? Is clear, sunny? Is that okay? Or what are you looking for conditions?
So in the spring, we're definitely looking for, like even a 40-degree day the bugs are going to pop, the fish are going to be active. And coming from a long winter, it feels like a 60-degree day. And, if the sun's out, great. It tends to be a little bit warmer if it's like just lightly snowing. But the challenge that we see in the spring is all the boat ramps are still under like 6 feet of snow.
Oh, right.
So we have a raft, and we're able to push the raft over the snow and, find access to the river that way. But the best activity is going to be, in the heat of the day from like noon to 4. And a lot of people are not aware of this. And so you take them out there, and honestly, a good day in the spring rivals any day in the summer. With tons of snow on the ground, people cannot believe it.
That is awesome. So are you doing the same program then? Are you getting in at a boat ramp and just basically floating the river as you would do in the summer or fall?
Yeah, exactly. But there's no pressure. There's nobody out there. Yeah, it's just really a special time of year.
Sounds great. So like you said, that the best time that could start happening is it usually around that mid-March, late March when you start thinking about, that getting back into it?
Yeah. You're watching the weather, and I'm looking for like a 45-degree day, and you just know the river's going to pop.
Yeah. What does it look like when it pops, if you're out there and it starts popping at noon or something like that?
Well, I mean, if I don't know where a trout lives by now, I'm screwed.
Yeah.
But you can pull into a riffle or in a slough, like a really just calm backwater, and you sit and you look at it for 10 seconds. And if you don't see heads, you move on, because it's all sight fishing. It's all, there should be fish right here. And you start to see the little blue wings. You start to see their wings coming up off the water. Midges are hard to see from a distance, but you can see a blue wing from a distance. And, it's like clockwork. You see that nose come up and sip it, and it's really, really exciting.
Wow. What is a typical fly you're using there as far as blue wing? What size, what pattern? And then maybe talk a little about your leader setup.
Yeah, so, these fish they're not picky. They're cutthroat. But you do have to have the right size fly. So like a size 16, comparadun, kind of sparsely tied, little elk hair post. And then with that fly, I would fish, probably at least a 10-foot 5X leader. Not too technical, and it's quite forgiving. The fish will give you multiple chances as long as the fly lands, relatively soft. It's just epic, man.
Okay. And are you typically fishing out of the raft when you're using the raft?
Either way, you can pull over, you can walk up to the top of the run and kind of get more stealthy, and yeah.
Right. Gosh. And these are the Yellowstone cutthroat for the most part?
No, these would be Snake River cutthroat.
Oh, Snake River. Right. Yeah. So these are different. So talk about that a little bit. So you have a couple of things going on here. These are the Snake River, and aren't there other species too in this part of the snake?
Yeah, we have whitefish, we have a couple brown trout, a couple brook trout, but really the fish that we're after is the Snake River cutthroat.
Yeah, Snake River cutthroat. That's it, because that's the native. That's the one fish out of all of them that's native.
Yeah. Well, the whitefish, most, the whitefish and the suckers, those are all native.
Right. God, that's great. Nice. Okay. And so that's it. Sounds like it's pretty straightforward in the wintertime. You're not going to have as much pressure. What about if you don't have a boat? Are there places to go to? Can you fish the snake? Or maybe are there other tributaries that you could fish and maybe get some action that time of year?
I would say the snake is it's the best access. And a lot of the tributaries don't even open till April 1st. But, the snake is sort of the femoral artery of town, and
because it's the tailwater. That's the big thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So during the winter months at low flows, most of the fish, I would say, move out of the tributaries and they move into the snake.
Oh, right.
So you're not going to have this sort of action that I'm talking about up a tributary. The tributary fish, if they're in there, they're going to be more sort of, more opportunistic, and they're not going to be feeding as much. So.
Yeah. Okay. So the Snake River cutthroat. And what's a typical size of a Snake River cutthroat? What's a typical, and then what's a bigger Snake River cutty?
I would say like a 20-inch Snake River cutthroat is a very large fish.
Yeah.
But you have to take into account we have really long winters. We have a short growing season. The river's really steep. It's prone to flooding. So when you do catch that 19, 20-inch fish, I mean, that's an old fish. And it's really special to have a native trout fishery where we can, I live 2 minutes from the river. I could go fishing as soon as we hang up this call.
No kidding.
And yeah, it's just special in that way. I think you have to appreciate a true fisherman has to appreciate every river you step into.
Yeah.
For what it is. I don't really fish big articulated streamers on this river. These cutthroat are more, they eat bugs, they do eat streamers, but it's not a brown trout fishery.
No, this is to experience this is a Snake River cutthroat on the surface on a dry fly. That's kind of what this is about.
Yeah. And, I think Jack Dennis is the first person that he sort of made this place famous because he said years ago, you could catch a trout on a dry fly every month of the year in Jackson. And it's true. Your window in January might be short, but if the sun comes out and the water temperature just bumps up a degree or two, there will be bugs and there will be fish eating them. So it's pretty unique in that way.
Right. What's it like in Jackson Hole so you said the town has 15,000 people?
Yeah, give or take.
15,000. And then what's it like? So now it's probably got 15,000 people, but come July when there's millions coming through, what is that like? Is it exciting? Is it fun? Or you get, for you, what is it like?
You mean when tourist season hits in the summer?
Exactly.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of people in a small area. And I mean, we could talk all day about the issues with that, with the traffic and everything. But at the end of the day, people are here to enjoy the outdoors. And it's, as stewards of the environment and as stewards of the river, it's kind of our chance to, sort of educate our clients and educate these people about how fragile the resource is in the ecosystem. And yeah, it's just, I connect a lot with my clients, kind of introducing them to this sport and this area. And I think one of our jobs as guides is to also educate people about the native trout and how rare it really is to have a native trout. I mean,
right.
So many people have heard about the fishing in Patagonia or New Zealand, but one thing they don't take into account or realize is that they're not native trout. They're wild, but they were stocked there. So to have such a thriving trout fishery here, in this small city that we live in, is a really cool thing.
That is. Talk about that a little bit just on the trout itself. How, it sounds like a little about the life history or how it differs from other cutthroat in there, because you do have a few other species and how unique that is. Because, you can go to a lot of places and catch rainbow, catch brown trout, but you're not going to find a native species, right? That's a native cutthroat especially.
Yeah, right. I believe there's 26 different cutthroat species in the West. And we're lucky to have the Snake River cutthroat. And then up in Yellowstone, we have the Yellowstone cutthroat.
Okay.
And I think, don't quote me on this, Dave, but I'm pretty sure it's the same genus.
Yeah. Well, the question was going to be, you got Snake River cutthroat, you got that. You got Yellowstone cutthroat. Are there any other cutthroat that are out around your area nearby?
Well, yeah, we have Colorado River cutthroat in Wyoming.
Yep. And the other one you don't have, I don't think, is West Slope cutthroat, which I think are a little bit further west.
Yeah, we don't have West Slope.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a cut slam out here, and I can't even remember the fourth. I can't even remember the fourth species.
Yeah, the cut slam. Where is that? Is that cut slam from? Is that like a Wyoming cut slam, or what's the cut slam?
Yeah, it's like it's a Wyoming thing put on by the Game and Fish.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and if you catch all four species, they send you a plaque, and it doesn't have to be 4 species in a day. I think it's 4 species in a year.
Yeah, they got a whole. I'm looking at now the
Bonneville.
That's right.
Yep, Bonnies. That's right.
Wow, those fish are amazing. Yeah, those cutthroat are beautiful. They're golden, right? I mean, I guess the colors can vary, but that's really cool.
Yeah,
I'm on the Wyoming Fish and Game site now. There's an online application, interactive cut slam guide. There's definitely some resources there.
Yeah, we're really lucky, man.
Right on.
It's an amazing place.
Well, how did we mentioned Scott at the start, who kind of runs Grand Teton Fly Fishing? How did you come to connect with him after? Well, we had Jack Dennis, right? So after that, where did Scott fit into the picture?
Yeah, so Scott was Jack's head guide.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, and then so when Jack sold the guiding business, he sold it to Scott Smith and Mark Fuller, who were two of the head guides.
Oh, gotcha. So Jack Dennis sold. So this is from Jack Dennis's shop, basically. This program still.
We're all the old Jack Dennis crew. So falling in with Scott and Mark was just awesome for me. I mean, I was very young and green. I grew up here and I did have a drift boat.
What was your drift boat? What was that drift boat you have?
Oh, it was a Clacker Craft. It was actually a high side. My first boat was a high side.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah. Was that before your first boat? Did they have the low sides back then, or why'd you get a high side? Was it just there?
Well, I think the reason I got a high side was because my uncle helped me buy this boat in high school, and he thought it was safer.
Oh, right.
Safer to row, safer to learn to row. But if you're guiding and you're rowing every day, you quickly realize it's definitely not the friendliest boat on your back.
No, especially with the wind, right, and some of that stuff.
Yeah. So then I got a low side.
Yeah. What do you have now?
I've got a 16 Eddy Clacker Craft.
Yeah, Clacker, 16-foot Eddy, like low side. Is this so kind of they're all a little similar, right? That'd be similar to like Hyde's low side boat or whatever. I'm not sure what they're called. Yeah. Okay. So it's not is it a pram? Would you call it a pram? Does it have the pointed bow?
Yep.
It does. Yeah. So it's got
so it's not a skiff.
Not a skiff. Gotcha.
Because I like to put a motor on the back, and I really like to fish lakes.
Oh wow, that's really cool.
Yeah. So but backtrack a little bit. So when I was a first year fishing guide, I did have mentors because I worked in the Jack Dennis fly shop, and I remember a couple of senior guides saying, make sure here's some things you need to do to make sure this is a successful career for you. So one of the things was at the end of the guide season, well, make sure you keep a calendar and write notes. Write notes about every day and write notes about your clients, and keep in touch with your people. And make sure you send them Christmas cards after the first year.
Sure.
Which I did, and it was awesome. Like all of those people I sent Christmas cards to booked me
the
following year. And
That's amazing.
Still some of those clients are like my clients from my very first year.
Do you still send Christmas cards to this day?
Less so. But I do send emails, and instead of Christmas cards, I just call people,
Yeah.
But that sort of attitude of what you lack in experience, you kind of make up for in hustle, and just a positive attitude. I mean, I kept people out late first year. I kept people out till dark, like all the time, because I just wanted people to have the best day ever, And yeah, I had a clean truck. I served amazing lunches, and I think those things kind of paid off.
Right. Yeah, those are big. It seems like with the guide, the fishing is fishing, right? It could be up and down, but it's all those little things, right? I think if you nail those, you make the experience. You could even you can have a bad day right on the water, maybe as far as catching the fish, but still have a good day with the client.
Totally. Exactly. And if you teach people something and people can see that you're putting effort in. And honestly, sometimes the fishless days are the hardest days on the guide,
Yeah, the fishless are the hardest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I had to work twice as hard to try to find fish. Although fishless days here are really rare. We can put a fly rod in a kid's hand, and with 20 minutes of casting practice and just coaching, we can get that kid to throw 30 feet. And then if you're in a drift boat, we use the drift boat as a tool, because with the boat, you can position the cast and position the fly exactly where you want it. That's why I think this is such a great area for beginners, is because cutthroat are pretty friendly fish. They're not super picky, and we fish out of drift boats.
Yeah, you have a lot of access, and some of it is you're almost kind of fishing, like, right, you get in the boat in the position, so you're working their fly almost. Are you doing that a lot out there?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
definitely. That's 90% of guiding out here is rowing the boat accordingly so that the fly is in the proper water and drifting as it should. You can honestly almost set the hook with a drift boat.
Oh really? Right.
Oh yeah, like you let their line drift out in front of the boat a little bit, teaching them how to mend. And then when you see that fish eat, if their line's already tight, you just pull back on the oars really hard. Their line goes tight, boom, fish on.
Wow. Yeah, that's cool. Setting it with the drift boat. Okay.
Oh yeah, there's all sorts of tricks, man.
Yeah, that's great.
But at the end of the day, I think the idea is to make them believe they did it all by themselves.
Exactly. Do you get a mix of, you mentioned you get your returning clients, like in any given year, is it kind of like a half and half new people coming through, or what's that look like for you?
For me, it's actually now 100% people I know.
Oh, it is. Yeah. Right.
It is. Yeah. And that's a great place to be. I mean, I get to pick and choose who I fish with. And unfortunately, there's just one of me, and I have to have a family life. And so I take weekends off, but I could book, if I wanted to, I could book every single day of the summer just with people that I know.
Today's episode is brought to you by Grand Teton Fly Fishing. They're a top guide service and fly shop with access to some of the most prized waters in western Wyoming. And their guide team brings together over 200 years of local experience. Their goal is simple, to share these amazing resources and help you experience the thrill of a native cutthroat rising to a single dry fly, all in the shadows of the Tetons. It's the kind of experience that stays with you and fosters a deep appreciation for the waters we love. You can check them out right now at grandtetonflyfishing.com. And if you book a trip, let them know you heard about them through this podcast today. You also have an operation, some travel. It sounds like maybe not as much as you used to do. You got 3 kids now. I think you've got a young one there. But what does that look like? Where are some of those places around the country, the world that you're really loving, either been there in the past or looking forward to getting back to?
Oh man. I love sight fishing whenever possible. So I'm kind of drawn to like the saltwater flats environments. But yeah, I've, over the last probably 8 years, I've been hosting fishing trips. And these are just clients of mine that I've taken on trips. We've been to Greenland, been to Cuba, been to the Bahamas, Bolivia,
wow,
Mexico, Belize, just kind of all over.
What was Cuba? What was that like?
Oh man, Cuba was last April. Cuba was really cool. We were on a mothership and we got to spend a couple days in Havana before the trip. And that was a very unique place. And the fishery was really remarkable. I've never seen a place like that where, it's not finding the fish is the hardest part, but then every tarpon that we cast at, if it was a decent cast, the fish ate the fly. Which is not my experience in places like the Florida Keys where there's so much pressure, or I don't know what it is, but you perfect cast, you're stripping and you see the fly right in front of their nose and they don't even look at it, But in Cuba, every single tarpon ate the fly.
Wow.
And I don't know why, but the only thing I can think of is less fishing pressure.
Right. And was that the main species you were going for?
Yeah, there's really good tarpon fishing. There's big Cuba snapper, permit, bonefish, barracuda, all the normal flat species. But yeah, it was very, very sweet. Very cool place.
What was doing the mothership experience? Maybe describe that a little bit.
Okay, so the mothership, it's we were on that Avalon 1, which is one of the original boats in Cuba. But there's 10 rooms, all the staff and the guides are on the boat with you. It's 3 stories. So there's plenty of room for people to spread out. Very comfortable, really, really well thought out operation. You come back from fishing and you're sunburnt and sweaty and they have a platter of ice cold towels for your face. And then they hand you a rum punch.
A rum punch.
Yeah, it's just really epic. And then about 30 minutes later, the platter of appetizers comes out, and you're just really well taken care of. And then the benefit of the mothership is that you're anchored right there 5 minutes from the fishing grounds.
Oh, you're right there.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So you got your boat, yeah.
So at night, we'd sit on the top deck of the boat, and there's a big hot tub up there.
Oh, man.
And so we're just like enjoying each other's company and talking about the fishing and all the stories that come from it.
Yeah.
And we're watching tarpon just roll in the sunset.
Oh, no kidding.
From the top of the boat. Yeah,
wow.
It was unbelievable.
Oh my gosh. That's what's cool about it is you're you are in their environment. You're not just on land, you're like just sitting there floating
Yeah.
That is really cool.
Yeah. Awesome.
So that would be, I would guess that would be something you'd want to do again. Is that a trip that like is tough to put together annually?
It is because, a lot of people that have done Cuba are probably gonna go somewhere else just to see a new place. But yeah, between me and Scott, at Grand Teton Fly Fishing, we're building kind of a hosting program where we take our guests all over the world. So it's a win-win. I mean, because we do the research for these places, we put the whole trip together, and a lot of times we bring the gear too. So people that come on these trips, being a part of a group experience, and you get all the photos that come with it, and just the camaraderie of a good group of people, it's a lot of fun.
That is really cool. Good. So you got that. And I'm looking at the Avalon one. Yeah, it's a huge boat. It's really cool. God, look at that thing. It's giant, 3 stories. Okay. What's it like for the sleeping? Is it pretty just like normal sleeping in your house?
Oh yeah, very comfortable. I mean, fully air conditioned, hot water showers, full bathroom. I mean, it's luxury, total luxury.
Nice. So you got Cuba down. What else do you have? Do you have other trips out there you want to get back to around the country, the world?
I've done a lot of fishing in Tahiti actually. And there's a place near Tahiti in the Tuamotus. So Tahiti itself is in the Society Islands. About a 2-hour flight away from Tahiti is a little atoll called Anaa. And this place has really captured my heart. I've been there 3 times, and it's just a really, really incredible, it's an incredible fishery. There's bonefish there. There's all the trevally species. We've got giant trevally, bluefin trevally. There's Napoleon wrasse there. There's tons of snapper species. There's sharks. But on top of all that, the cultural experience there is unbelievable. The locals just treat you like family, and when we visit there, because this atoll is so remote that our group of fishermen, we're really the only tourists there. And so, they bring you in and they just make you feel so welcome. And there's beer throwing competition. There's a pig roast on the beach. There's tons of music. Literally everybody on that island can pick up an instrument and just start playing. So when you leave that place, like you feel like you're changed, and a lot of places I've been to, a lot of these fishing destinations all over the world, there's not a whole lot of cultural exchange happening.
Yeah.
And for me, fly fishing travel is definitely about the fish. Don't get me wrong, but there's so much more you can appreciate, the culture and the food and just being in this different environment. It changes your paradigm a little bit. And I think there's like so much value in that as a human being, just seeing the world, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I love about fly fishing travel, is just being in a remote place in a completely different culture, different language, and waving a fly rod around. I mean, how can that suck?
Yeah. No, I'm with you, man. I totally agree. I think that, that's come up a number of times on the podcast, and it was funny. I think I'd asked somebody, I can't remember who it was, on another podcast about, that I basically said the same thing. I was like, I mean, the travel, everything, it feels like that's kind of what it's all about. And then, but he was kind of like, no, it's actually the fly fishing is the most important thing, but I think, I think it is. Obviously it's kind of what's bringing us together, but I think you're totally right on. Like if you're not loving the cultures and being in a place like that in Tahiti, French Polynesia, anywhere really, to be honest with you, you could even be in North America or a city or town in the United States that's just kind of has its own unique culture. Like, so I think that that's the extreme, what you're talking about there. I think that's extreme. If you can do that, that's huge. But I always go back to that. I had this episode way back, gosh, I'm trying to think now, probably in the hundreds, but our guest was talking about how, the destination is about where, anything could be a destination. You know what I mean? She was saying like, you can go to New York and that could be your destination. So I think there is a lot of awesome stuff. It sounds like you've traveled all over the place. I mean, what's left for you now? You've hit all these places. Like you've just named 2 that are probably high on anybody's bucket list. What else do you think about doing?
Oh man, there's still so much. I mean, the world's 85% water, right?
Right.
So I don't know. There's a lot. There's a lot out there. I mean, there's a lot in the U.S. that I haven't seen.
Right.
I'd love to go striper fishing. I'd love to do more steelhead salmon fishing up in your area. That's kind of one of the cool parts about this journey that I'm on, is that knowing that there's so much out there to see and experience, and knowing that I'll never get to do it all,
Yeah. What does that feel like for you?
It's kind of a sobering.
Yeah. Does
thing.
that we're all in that situation? No matter how much money or time you have, you can't do it all. What's that feel like to you? How do you look at the future and prioritize?
Oh man, I just try to be present as often as I can, and
Yeah.
as many cool places I've seen in the world, people come to Jackson Hole to trout fish, and so I often try to pinch myself when I'm sitting in the drift boat. Sometimes it feels like a day of work, and I'm like, man, people have come from all over the world to come see my little slice of heaven, and so I guess I just try to be present and put my phone down and just enjoy who I'm with and enjoy what I'm doing, and teach it to my kids. And, I've got a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, both girls. And then we have a 15-day-old baby boy. And a lot of people, when my little boy was born, a lot of people were like, oh, what does that feel like having a boy? And I'm like, well, it feels really no different than having girls. I mean, I've taught my girls how to fish, and it really doesn't matter to me.
It doesn't.
I want to spend time outdoors with my family, just teaching them all the things that make my life so special, and introduce them to outdoor experiences, camping, hunting, fishing, because I think that's where true happiness is just spending time outside with loved ones.
Yeah, it is. No, I 100% agree. I think the outdoors, how long have we been on the planet, and it's been mostly outdoors, hunting, gathering, right? Except for the last few hundred years or whatever it's been, I mean, we've been, that's our place. So I feel that's why it's so good for people, and that's why people love it so much once they try fly fishing or they realize, right, the outdoors. And then the girls, the same thing, man. I have 2 girls as well. And I remember thinking that before my kids were born. I was always thinking, God, man, having a boy, that'd be cool, all that stuff. And then, And then as soon as I remember when my first daughter was born, I was like, didn't even think about that. Like was never even a thought, to be honest with you.
Right.
Nice. Well, this is cool. I think we've covered a few things here. One thing I don't want to miss today, because you mentioned it, and I love lakes. I think that lake fishing, we have a whole podcast series we do with Phil Roy in the Littoral Zone. And I think it's an awesome thing that, not as many people take advantage of. But talk about that. What does your stillwater fishing look like? I know there's some sweet places out there. Are you doing that just on your off time, or is that something where you can kind of like take clients?
Yeah. So, I'm not going to specifically say where I fish lakes, but I guide a lot of lakes.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Oh yeah. More than half of my season is now lake fishing. And I think I'm in that position to be able to fish lakes because I put in my time on the rivers and kind of building my guest list of friends and clients. Mm-hmm. And it was sort of my job to introduce them to lakes and grow their fly fishing experience. I just wanted to introduce people to okay, if you think this is cool, you're not going to believe what we can do on a lake,
Yeah.
And I think the reason I love lakes so much is because most of the time you can sight fish. And I think there's less people fishing lakes. And because the fish don't have to fight current, I think they just get much fatter. So it is a trophy fishery. I mean, there's just something. Fishing a lake forces you to slow down and really just kind of focus instead of just pounding the banks from a moving drift boat all day.
Right. How do you do that with you said sight fishing. I love that I don't always think of lake fishing as sight fishing. How is that? Is that something you're always looking for the opportunities, or talk about what that looks like?
Yeah, so I have a really proper Boston whaler, 22-foot lake boat. And using that boat, I can get up into the shallows and, I can take people to these sand flats that would just blow your mind, Dave.
Really?
It is unbelievable.
So it sounds like you're creating that,
yes,
that's permit
definitely.
bonefish.
Yes, 100%. So I could sneak up on these sand flats, and I have a center console. So what I do is I stand up on the center console and I look, and I can spot fish 100 feet away and the client has no idea they're there, and you kind of build it up and you're like, okay, we have a fish. He's moving left to right. He's at 11 o'clock and I need you to start casting at 12 o'clock. I need you to lay out 50 feet of line, land it softly, and perfect execution, perfect cast. Okay, let the fly drop. Okay, give me a bump. Okay, long strip. And then you see the fish picked it up. The fish is now trailing behind the fly. And then I'm like, strip. And the client still doesn't see it happening. And then all of a sudden they come tight. And it's like, it's just this magical experience.
Wow.
Yeah. And I just love that so much. Maybe it's because part of me wants to be a saltwater guide.
Well, I was just going to say, what it sounds like you're doing is preparing yourself for later in life. You've got, and you're preparing your clients, which is smart. We've heard this before on some other areas around the country where, whether that's, heading up to Alaska or Canada for spay fishing, and then you take them out in the local trout waters and, wherever your home water is and teach them how to spay cast with the trout spay. But you're doing a similar thing, right? You're get them on lakes, getting them a feel for what that feels like in salt. And then you're like, hey, we're heading to fish for, bonefish.
Hey, by the way, we're headed to the Bahamas.
Yeah. And how you can pass that up? I mean, this makes total sense. So what's keeping you from, obviously the cool thing is Scott is amazing. I don't know Scott as well as you, obviously, but we had that one podcast episode. We'll put a link in the show notes to that. It was great. You can just hear same with you, the knowledge, the history, the love, the passion, like it really comes out in Scott and you too. What is it about that? What keeps you staying going strong in Jackson, not pulling up and saying, hey family, let's move to Cuba or wherever?
Yeah, I just love this area. I just love this place, and also I've built a good business here, so I'm not leaving to go start somewhere new. But that's kind of why I got into hosting trips, is because I want to fly fish year round. I'm not in the ski industry. I'm not one of those guys that guides a little bit and then does something else in the off season. My heart, my soul is in fly fishing year round. So the best way for me to do that was to try to put these trips together, these group trips together, which has been awesome. You could consider it a full-time living now, just putting groups together, putting trips together all over the place. So that was how I was able to stay in fly fishing year round.
Yeah, that's it.
And kind of nurturing my clientele base, where I was selling these people on, while I'm out guiding them, I'm selling them on a fishing trip elsewhere because we have such a good time together,
Yeah. And when you're on the lakes, you were mentioning, is that, the lakes that you're do you think most lakes out there have these types of sand flat sort of thing where you can sight fish for trout?
Yeah.
And this is trout that are basically coming in like they do, right? They come from the deep, depending on the water temperatures and all that, and then they come to the shallow, the littoral zone, and they feed more. Is that kind of what you're doing? And you're just
definitely,
you're elevated. You got and I'm looking at a 22-foot Boston Whaler, which looks like a boat you could take out on the ocean. Is that boat?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. So it's a full on. But your client is on the deck just above, so they could see things and you could see things and you can sight fish. And is this dry flies, stream? What are you using with the sight fishing?
So there is a dry fly window, and that's exciting. That's really fun because these are cutthroat.
Oh, they're cutthroat still. So these are still cutthroat in lakes?
Yep.
Amazing.
And so cutthroat love dry flies. So if you hit it right, it's like bone fishing, but with dry flies, mayflies, caddis, but that's kind of a short window. A lot of times the fish are suspended above the weed beds, and we're fishing a small leech to them, or a dry dropper, nymphing. There's a lot of different tactics, and there's so much more that goes into it. I play the sun, I play the wind, and it's really rewarding for me when it all lines up. And all right, the fish should be here, and they are here, and it's just awesome.
Yeah. What's your window for lake fishing? I know all lakes are different sizes and stuff, but typically, when do you think is a good time to be hitting the lakes?
I would say June, July.
Okay, so you want to hit the summer, yeah.
Yeah, June, July. The surface temps get a little warm in August, and so the fish are going to go a little deeper, but then again in September, October. So it can be a year-round thing, or not a year-round thing, but all summer at least.
Yeah, all summer. Wow.
Yeah.
Sounds like you've built a pretty amazing operation from like we said, taking it back to Jack Dennis and, and then up to present day. What else are we, leaving that we haven't chatted about here? Any other big things you want to hit on before we get out of here? Any trips or anything else?
Man, not so much. Let me think about that.
Yeah. Well, I've got a few more questions for you. I just want to make sure we don't miss anything specific, for people listening. But I wanted to hear, as you're thinking about that, just on Jackson Hole, for somebody who hasn't been there, what is it? What's the thing? What do you think brings 6 million people to Jackson Hole? Is it one thing? Is it a bunch of things?
I think it's a bunch of things. I think the fact that we have 2 national parks right here, I think a lot of people are craving the outdoor life and the outdoor experiences that I get to live every day. If you live in a city, family vacations are going to look like, driving to a place like this where you can horseback ride, you can fish, you can sightsee, hike. I mean, the outdoor industry is growing a lot.
It is.
And I think it's cool because in order to protect a place, you have to fall in love with it first. And I think for people to see Jackson and see that there's an entire industry, like we don't really have an industry out here besides tourism and the outdoor industry. And so for people to see, guys like me raising a family in a place like this, guiding fishermen, I think it's just cool to introduce people to that other lifestyle, and it's not all about chasing money.
No.
It's more about quality of life and, just living a healthy, positive life and living in a great place like this. I mean, that's worth millions of dollars right there.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty spectacular. It's and it's not just one thing. I think, the Tetons obviously are crazy, right? How you can just look at these I remember the first time I saw the Tetons, it was just like, whoa. And then you got buffalo, right? You got all these things and then you could fish these rivers, fly fish them with literally animals, I mean. And then it's Yellowstone, right? You got Yellowstone, I think, which is it the top national park in the country as far as visitation? It's either 1 or 2, right?
It's got to be up there, yeah. I mean, and it's the first national park.
Yeah, and it's the first, right? And you got that whole history there, right?
So much history, and we're like the gateway of these beautiful places. I mean, Jackson is front and center. If you drive 100 miles in any direction, you're going to have like unlimited wilderness, Yeah. But then on top of all that, we have an airport, we have amazing nightlife, we have music, we have restaurants, so it really is like one of those incredible places in the West.
Yeah, it is incredible. What is the closest big city to you guys? Bigger city?
So Salt Lake.
Oh, Salt Lake, yeah.
Salt Lake's about 4 hours away.
Yeah, Salt Lake. Okay. Nice. Well, no, I think this is good. I just wanted to set the stage today just for, I was thinking Jackson Hole. I think we've done a good job of picturing people coming into that area and just, if they don't know about this spot, obviously it's already on the map. But I've got a couple of random ones you've kind of got me thinking here. You mentioned music, kind of drink, food, stuff like that. Let's start with a restaurant. Let's say somebody's coming through Jackson Hole. Is there a place you'd recommend? There must be a number of great places, but if they're going out to eat, where should they head?
Wow. Yeah, there's so many great restaurants here. So I would say, how about we do top 3?
Oh, nice. I love it.
And I come from kind of a fine dining background because my dad was a chef.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm going to do fine dining.
Perfect.
So if you're looking for like a beautiful date night or a celebration, number 1 would be, let's start with the third.
Okay. Yeah, let's do top 3 down.
Okay, top 3. So I would say Trio. Yep, Trio. And then after that, I would do the Kitchen. And then probably the top restaurant out here would be the Snake River Grill.
Okay, Snake River Grill.
Yep.
Okay, and what's the Trio? What type of food is that?
It's like an American sort of pub. But it's like elevated. It's really quality, local food, local farms. And then the Kitchen, I guess, would be maybe a little bit more like sushi. And then Snake River Grill would be like steaks.
Yeah, steaks. Perfect. That's it. Yeah, you got to have some steaks out in that country.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, good. Okay, so we got a few restaurants. What about you mentioned the music. What's that like? Like, do you have some, are there some events that they're out there? Are there other, or what do you listen to for music?
Yeah, I mean, we have like tons of music here. At any given night at the Cowboy Bar, there's a live band. Teton Village on Sunday nights all summer long has free concerts. And then at the top of Snow King is a relatively new venue, but there's all sorts of music up there. So it's cool because you have to take the gondola up there.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and the food trucks actually drive along the cat tracks, the switchbacks, all the way up to the top of Snow King.
Huh.
Yeah, so, I mean, I saw Old Crow Medicine Show up there.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, it's an amazing place. I mean, we definitely have plenty of visitors here, and there's loads to do. I mean, whitewater rafting, horseback riding, hiking, wildlife tours, photography tours, fishing tours.
Hunting.
You know, kayaking, hunting, you name it. There's tons to do out here.
Yeah, and lots of camp. Yeah, pretty much everything. Camping, you know, with the national parks and you name it. That's cool. Well, I think this has been a good summary of kind of what you have going. What if somebody wanted to get a trip? It sounds like you're pretty booked up, and Scott has some other guides. When do you think is a good time to be looking at, you know, hitting the river up there?
So kind of what I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast was my favorite time is probably, you know, if you can get here before the crowds, like late March into April. The other thing about that time of year is the guides aren't burnt out yet. You know, after a long summer, it gets pretty tiring. But like early season before runoff usually starts when the snow melts, like mid-May, early May. And then the rivers are high and off color for a good month.
For a month. So are you guys taking a break? What's going on in that month?
Well, luckily all the lakes start to thaw.
Oh, okay.
So, and there are some tailwater, like right below the dam. We still fish the snake, but a lot of the snow and upper elevation ice is definitely starting to melt. So that's kind of when we start hitting lakes. So there's always an experience out here.
Yeah.
I mean, you can even come out here in February, and we could get a pair of snowshoes for you. We hike you into the river. I mean, there's experiences all year, you know? So.
Yeah. So it's pretty open. I guess depending on your time, you know, if you're coming up with the family, whenever you're coming up for your vacation, you know, that might be a time you can check in and see what you guys have open.
Exactly. Yeah. The best time to fish is whenever you're able.
Yeah. When you have time. Exactly. That's the thing about fly fishing is that, yeah, sometimes you can't choose exactly the date, but this has been awesome, Josh. I think, like you said, we'll send everybody out to Grand Teton Fly Fishing if they want to check in with you or with Scott or anybody else and get some information there. Just want to thank you for your time today. This has been great. Love the stories we've talked about, getting into Cuba and some of the other Tahiti and some of that stuff has been great. So, yeah, looking forward to staying in touch with you this year. And, we'll definitely keep in touch.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Dave. Thanks for having me on, man.
Call to action today. If you're interested in checking in, if you're going to be out in that neck of the woods, Grand Teton, national parks, Yellowstone, anywhere out there, check in with Josh, check in with Grand Teton Fly Fishing and find out if they have availability. I think not only streams, but some of that lake stillwater stuff would be pretty cool. All right, before we get out of here, a couple more things. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever app you're on listening right now, if you click that plus button and follow the show, you're going to get that next one delivered to your inbox. And you don't want to miss out on the next week's episode as we've got Tommy Lynch back on the podcast. This is one of our biggest streamer episodes of all time, almost 3 years back. We're bringing him back on for round 2, and Tommy's going to get back into it with streamers. We go deep on a bunch of amazing topics. Tommy's out in the Michigan area, one of the big streamer guys around the country. You don't want to miss that one, so follow the show and you'll get updated when that comes out. All right, I'm out of here. It's late. No, it's not late in the evening. It's actually early in the evening. But I think it might be a late night tonight. So if you're having a late night tonight, or maybe it's morning, or maybe it's afternoon, wherever it is, whatever time it is, wherever you are in the world, I appreciate you for sticking in all the way till the very end here. And I hope to talk to you and connect with you online somewhere as we go. Thanks again. Talk to you soon.